Hello and welcome to DigFin VOX, Voices in Digital Finance. I'm your host, Jame. If you enjoy the program, give us a like, share, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. My guest today is Guillaume Huet, an AI data specialist and consultant. On behalf of DigFin, Guillaume asked ChatGPT what would be the best fintech business to start today. The results, as you'd expect, were the unexpected. Guillaume Huet, welcome to DigFin VOX.
Thank you.
So you are a banker, consultant, data expert, and now becoming a generative AI prompt expert.
Well, it's a kind of I wouldn't name myself as a generative AI expert yet, but I'm investing a lot of energy and in this field indeed. Yeah.
So what we did is Guillaume and I came up with a project for DigFin VOX for this episode, where we wanted to use ChatGPT to come up with ideas about, in this case, just playing around, what would be the model to build a fintech today that would, in 5 years' time, have revenues of $100 million. So that was our starting point. We wanted to see what the technology could do, what it could imagine, and what sort of practical outcomes we might be able to get from using it. This is just an experiment and a bit of fun, so don't take it too seriously, but we were interested in what the potential power of these learning language models. So Guillaume, why don't you tell us a little bit about the way you thought about this question I had, what would be a great fintech business model to start today, and how you went about trying to add some value to this question.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Jane. First, we are talking about the standard ChatGPT version that everyone can access. We are talking about the API version, where we have the freedom to go a few notches further in terms of engineering. Okay. So it's important because you might not receive the same level of answers if you do it on your prompt on your tool, if you have access to the solution. So just stepping back, just a second. When you are talking about large language model, we are talking about systems that have been, or models that have been trained on a corpus of documents, a huge corpus of documents, and so they have a limited amount of knowledge, which is very wide, but not so deep. So what you do in order to augment this, you connect it with external data. And then you use their reasoning capabilities that are embedded, let's say, in the large language model in order to exploit this data. And then stuffs happen. Let's say that you have some emergence of new ideas, new concepts. It could be some of them could be a bit vanilla, others could be really stunning, surprising, and that's the beauty of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how did we? I gave you a question. I gave you the goal, which was, let's describe a fintech business model that we could launch today. I think we specified it would be in Hong Kong, just because we're here. So we wanted to try to make it a little more specific. We wanted to have that revenue target achieved after 5 years. Then how did you go about working with the GPT to come up with a formula to figure this out?
Sure. So the solution that I designed, which is still a work in progress, where I'm at my 45th or 46th iteration, is pretty autonomous. So I kind of used a lot of, I would say, advanced prompt engineering solutions that have been already made public or experimented by the open source community, but also some experts from OpenAI. I know you have a lot of training on these topics in order to create an automated system. So what it does is that first it takes your topic. So in our case, the title was Fintech Startup Best Success Recipes for 2023 in Hong Kong. The top ideas and concepts that will generate 100 million USD in annual revenue within 5 years. So this was kind of the prompt on which it was asked to work. And then the first request, I send it, okay, define the objective. You shared with me a few objectives, sub-objectives, but I asked it to improve it and fine tune it. So this was the first thing. Once we got the title and the objectives, then I asked it to define the persona that will be best suited to discuss about it. And that's a very important point. And I like to, I would say, drill down a little bit on this. When you give a personality and when you give a role to the large language model, it's going to be zooming in the corpus of data that it has inside its training, I would say, history on which it has been trained in order to focus on this domain. So, for example, it's not going to come back with information related to any other startup that would be, for example, in health tech or whatever vertical where startups could be created. It will be focusing only on fintech. And so the personality that it will be coming with will be helping to direct the conversation. And the diversity of the different personas that it creates helps to get different angles on the same topic. And and that's how I put it. And then after, I kind of press the start button and go.
Yeah.
And that's what we call the auto GPT mode, where it starts to be going through the question and asking different persona and going through the conversation there.
Yeah. So these personas, the model developed these personas itself as well. You did not input specifics.
No. I didn't write anything there. I could have. You have the agency. You have the possibility to fine tune it. But in that case, I let it do the work. Yeah.
Right. So the four that this computer came up with to basically query itself and come up with like a question and answer format. It came up with names, titles, and backgrounds. It came up with a consultant, a fintech consultant named Jennifer, a venture capitalist named William, I've got the
CEO.
The CEO. Yes, there was a fintech founder named Charlotte, and then there was a head of digital transformation in the insurance industry named Oliver. So the computer came up with these personas, and then these personas then questioned the overall question that they teased out information about the overall question that Guillaume and I had fed to the model. So out of that, we ended up getting a number of different topics. It was sort of like a Q&A, as if it had been running, like a webinar or a panel discussion with these folks.
Yeah.
And so we had partnerships, revenue opportunities, emerging technologies, successful fintech ventures. Those were sort of like the four broad. And then it began to ask a few extra questions, which we'll get to, and then a few ideas. Other ideas to explore in terms of what would be the right business model. So Guillaume ran this. It took you several hours, I think, to get the model to spit out all of these answers for us. And then you sent it to me. So I've had a look at it. And I don't know so my preliminary take was a combination of like just boilerplate generic stuff, a few quite insightful or sort of intriguing questions, a few interesting ideas, and then a few kind of like crazy out there. It's just like word salad. It's just coming up with stuff, and it probably isn't very helpful. But out of that, there was some interesting things that you can start to sniff around. What would be some interesting takeaways? So, what was your reaction to this, Guillaume? Did you get a sense of when you looked at the outputs, which we'll discuss in a little more detail? Did you get a sense of particular takeaways or insights that you think would actually have use for people in the fintech world?
So every time I run this, I would say this algorithm in order to get results on whatever topic, I got a mixed bag of results. So as you mentioned, there's a lot of vanilla stuff, but already striking right the vanilla stuff is good. Like knowing exactly, for example, coming back on the fact that AI is a big topic on fintech, obviously, we knew it, but already getting this fact right and coming back with some very specific use case that for us might not be so surprising because both of us are in this field.
Right.
For depending on the audience, for some participants, it could be really stunning already to have this part. So the level, I would say, of accuracy of surprise that you can have while reading the material will depend on your own starting point. Obviously, we started with fintech. This is a place where you're particularly, I would say, comfortable. So most of this will be appearing as standard or vanilla for you. But once again, tracking this is already great. But then every time I discovered some pointers or some elements that stood out and brought a bit of, I would say, novelty. I would say, ideally, this is what you will expect from any good panel of experts, to learn something new. And most of the time, when I've been in this situation, I get a bit bored. It's nice, but I know everything that's being kind of discussed. But sometimes you discover a name, you discover a concept, you discover something that sparks something different. And this is really what I'm mostly trying to reach there, is to maximize the number of sparks that you can get from this conversation.
Yeah.
So by engineering a bit, by engineering it further, and I would say there's new ideas coming every day to kind of skim out all the vanilla stuff. Then you can get a bit of a concentrate, a precipitate of novelty that comes out. But yeah, indeed, it depends on your starting point, and it depends obviously of I would say the complexity of the topic itself.
Yeah. So, the GPT came up with a number of topical areas that it wanted its experts to talk about, and I did find some of these were interesting. So, for example, it may not have exactly used the language of embedded finance or open banking, but it was hitting those themes pretty hard consistently throughout its response. So it definitely had it. I wouldn't say it knew this, but obviously from its collection of the vast data out there, it can see that this is important to this industry. And so the consultant persona, Jennifer, was talking about a number of different partnership type arrangements, and some of them were what you would expect from a very introductory kind of discussion. One or two didn't really make any sense, but then she had a few in there which I thought were sort of thought provoking. So one that it suggested was bundling local banking services with streaming services. It's not really what I would normally think of embedded banking, but maybe there's an idea there, right?
Let me add one point here. When you tap into these models, sometimes we tend to forget that they are not trained on the corpus of documentation that we're used to look at. Like, for example, we're in Asia, so we might be most of the time looking at reports or materials that are related to Asia. But the training material is coming from all around the world: US, Eastern Europe, Brazil. And you may have use cases that are totally unexpected from what we see in Asia related to fintech. And it has the capacity to build bridges between use cases that are in totally unrelated the location that can bring novelty. I'm taking this because many years ago, when I worked into creation of joint venture in insurance, I learned about the fact that in Brazil, very often the life insurance companies were at some embedded, I would say, services with the lottery. So every time you buy a life insurance plan, you might be eligible for the lottery. And this is part of the package. It's a national activity. So every insurance company has this. And the same when I was in Romania many years ago, you go into, when you go in an agency, you have a robot, but a real robot that can talk to you on exchange in some of the branches, which was pretty new at the time. So when you are tapping into these models, you may tap into innovations that are coming from all around the world. That could be, bringing some new ideas.
Yeah. So maybe somebody's already done that in some marketplace and we just don't know about it.
Exactly.
Right. So then you look at that and then you get somebody to research and look into that. Then there was one on revenue opportunities. Obviously, that's going to be important. Here it was the venture capital persona, William, that was finding. I found this one not so. This one seemed a bit more generic to me, but a lot of it was using AI for lending models, robo advisory, some reg tech. There was the sorts of things I think were not gonna knock anybody's socks off. But again, one that I did like, though, which I thought was funny, was blockchain to basically decentralize investment banking and use smart contracts to underwrite to replace book building and underwriting. So I don't see that being realistic today, but who knows, right? I mean, why not? And I can't see any investment banker putting his or her hand up to volunteer to be disintermediated, but that way. But again,
I mean, if you take, I get your point, but if you take the case of arbitration 10 years ago, no bankers will have raised his hand for his arbitration activity to be automated. All of this is totally automated today. So clearly the plates are, the table is moving. So with generative AI, I definitely know companies that are looking at generating alpha through their internal data. You have Bloomberg GPT, for example,
right,
that trained its own model. And the sky is the limit.
Yeah. The most wild ones, there was another one on emerging technologies. I think this was probably more word salad than an insight. Things like quantum computing powered risk management. Yes, I'm sure we would all like to have quantum computing risk management capabilities, but first we need a quantum computer that we can use.
Yeah. It's possible that probably quantum computing is already there. The problem is that it's not in the industrial access to everyone. But
No,
there's always, if you look at IBM and so on, you can already rent on AWS some access to quantum computing. But obviously, this might not be the first place where you will be using quantum computing. But if you had to, why not?
No, and again, another fun one was neurotechnology trading interfaces. So basically, trading stocks or crypto with my Neuralink hookup. And again, in 50 years, who knows? But maybe not for the next 5 years. That's probably a little more sci-fi still.
Let me just put a slight nuance here. Did you know that they managed to use the generative AI and particularly the generative image generation capacity in order to do some brain reading? So basically, you get some external helmet, and they manage to know exactly what you're thinking about. And they can see exactly and visualize the image with a pretty high level of accuracy. You can dig this in. But obviously, you might not be doing some trading using this anytime soon, simply because you don't want to take the risk of having a trader doing the wrong transaction because he's been thinking about the wrong stuff. But it's indeed, it's pushing what I would call the overturn window of what's possible in terms of innovation.
Yeah. But one thing they had, so again, on this emergent technology question that the LLM raised, some things I think are clearly going to happen, and it's just a question of who gets there first. So financial education using AR, augmented reality or virtual reality. Yes, that seems like somehow or other that's probably going to be a thing.
Sure. Yeah, true. Lots of things happening in education right now with generative AI. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So I want to then go to, we've talked about some of the things that the experts talked about amongst themselves. And then they sort of came back and they had me, I guess because of the question, you must have inputted my name there. So I put
your name there.
Yes, I was the moderator of this this discussion. Very easy moderating job. And I found that my persona was asking some questions that I'm pretty sure I would not ask myself, but they came from somewhere. I think it was probably rooting around maybe some old DigFin stories or something. So, for example, and I found this very interesting. One, it asked about psychographic profiling. I did a story a couple of years ago about psychographics, which is basically, it started off in the US, but it's basically left the US because of many legal and social issues. But it's, it's used elsewhere. It's not really popular. It's a technique to try to use someone's, kind of a Freudian psychoanalytical approach to augment credit assessment decisioning.
I see.
So, but I also have to think, okay, that's a strange thing for this thing to kind of pick up on, but could be strange. It could just be random strange as noise, or it could be maybe somewhere it's connecting certain dots, and maybe this is becoming more prevalent or could become more in use with better data tools to combine with analysis of human psychology.
Well, one thing that we have to bear in mind, I didn't put your full name there. I just put Jame. So I don't think it connected the dots with you personally. So it must be coming on a stochastic statistical point of view on the highest probability of topics that should be connected with the question it is asked. So at some point in the large language model, this topic should have a high probability compared to others. So that's the reason why it could be coming with this topic. Because in fact, there's a probability of the next word on the next topic that could be coming in. And this one came up. So it might not be totally off subject. And is it kind of here, latent, and not really mature enough? Or is it something that will be coming back thanks to all of these new technologies? It's a question mark, but I will park it on the side, but not discard it totally.
Yeah. Two themes that I found these personas were hammering away at, which I think is correct. One was on, I mentioned the open banking, data sharing, open insurance models. It came up time and again in different guises. The other was biometrics, and it didn't really spell this out, but I would maybe broaden that, just like digital identity or verification processes using, it was very big on biometrics, but also other things. And it came up with a number of interesting theoretical, or perhaps real ways that people are using biometrics, but I can't tell if it was just throwing out words or if there was a more specific meaning to what it was trying to say. But it also came up with actual examples. I don't know in real life, but it was talking about, again, Jong-un and WeLab partnering together to do something. So, it's finding little things here and there, which are sort of interesting. But I thought that was on the right track in terms of, some of the most important, things that still need to be solved, that could open up a lot of doors, I think, for fintech.
True. Let me add one thing there. What I shared with you is the final result, but a little bit like someone doing a work on a topic, there's a lot of research that's been made that it kept notes on, and I have the history of all the drafts on the notes that it did. And interestingly, it kept in the result, the final result, what was considered as mature enough for publication, kind of, or in order to be voiced. Just like if someone is about to be speaking in a panel, he might be thinking about a lot of stuff, but there are stuff that he won't be voicing. And we have the same situation. So you have what I would call the intelligent waste, which are all of these data points that it thought about but didn't mention. Like I take here, I take just one sentence that I hear there. One of the most promising startups are Bowtie, 1 Degree, ZA Bank, DNX, Roots, Acumon. All of those are very well-known names, and it has all of these topics on the side. And sometimes it's going to look at all of these reserves of intelligence and bring it in the conversation, depending on the question that's coming. But there's also this aspect there.
Yeah. One of another sort of business idea that I found very interesting came from the Oliver persona. This person is meant to be a digital transformation specialist working in insurance. And this persona came up with a couple of different ideas, and I'm not going to read them all, but one was predictive failure analysis tools. So we're often using AI to make predictions, try to create some sort of visibility, whether it's on working capital, whether it's on some sort of credit assessment. And I think they're usually pitched as a positive. Even when we're using AI to flag potential fraud or risks, it's still, you hit a positive, and that means there's something there to look at. But this idea now was turning it around a little bit and saying, well, if we've got a platform that's matching investors with SMEs in this case, so there's many platforms out there that do this sort of, try to match financial, maybe invoice finance or that sort of thing. But this idea from the LLM was use it to predict failures or obstructions to small businesses, or perhaps I think you consider failures or obstructions in portfolio companies that perhaps a VC might be running, and then identify ways to help those businesses get out of a jam, basically. So I thought that was sort of interesting, taking the classic kind of matching engine type stuff that we are traditionally associate with these platforms and spinning it around.
True. No, it's I've always discovered new ideas when reading the output. Obviously, most of the results that you get are in fact coming from crossing of ideas from other locations and so on. But that's still already a beauty of it. Innovation is part of innovation is coming from that, right? Connecting ideas. But beside, it can also, not necessarily this model that I was working on, but AI has been known for discovering new stuff. About the work on AlphaFold regarding the molecule folding and so on, that totally, exactly, discovered some new molecules and so on. And so it can discover new stuff. And this is what is the next step, I would say, to be really coming up with a total novel concept, but also getting into the practicalities of so maybe since we are reaching the end there, I'm working on the next phase of it. The first thing that, as we discussed, it's soon going to be able to design a full report with all the key ideas and so on. But I'm also looking at giving it a bit of more directionality in order to do some kind of minor, simple consulting targeted objectives where you can have an action plan and maybe even some planning capacity and so on. That's down the way, but that's the idea.
Well, good luck to you. I want to share one last thing. At the end, it listed a few other ideas to explore, which I guess was a collective conclusion. Yeah. I should point out that it didn't actually give me a very good, it didn't actually tell me, okay, if you want a fintech that's going to earn this kind of revenue in a certain amount of time, do this. It wasn't that specific. It was much more explorational. So if you're looking for a quick fix to figure out your next venture, then this is not going to, you got to take this with a pinch of salt. But some of the ideas that it suggested were, I'll just mention one which I thought was fun, using augmented reality investment app or some sort of, I guess, goggles or whatever, overlaying a stock market ticker price on whenever you're looking at, say, a shop front or a product. Oh. So we've thought about this in terms of, maybe some product information, maybe, you could see if I go into a store, I'm looking to buy a widget, and maybe I would be able to get more information, dietary information on the food. Yeah. But this is more like, no, combine it with like Robinhood with going to like the Amazon store to buy books or buy food. And then you can see, oh, how well is this company doing in terms of the stock price?
Interesting. So, okay.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure this is actually a great idea, but you can kind of, I don't think we need to have a running stock ticker on every single thing that we interface with, but you can start to see where, where would that be appropriate? Where would that be interesting? Who might be interested in that? And then what do you connect that with to make that into something that, you would want to say, oh, I love this store, or I love this car, or I love this. And, oh, wow, the stock price is doing great. Maybe I want to, So I wouldn't advise people just go punting on the basis of that, but you can start to see where around the corner there could be some super interesting models that are just being invented.
Totally. I can totally think about a few people on the capital market side who will be considering to have this kind of AR glasses. And if they see, for example, a queue of people waiting in front of a shop and wondering, okay, what is shop about? What do they do? And suddenly having the ticker or having some outlook and do a transaction immediately. So this could be yeah, the next step. But indeed, when you combine all these technologies, new ideas come.
Yes, and new risks, of course. So data sharing, privacy, cybersecurity will all be super massively important for any of this. But I want to wrap it up. Guillaume, thank you so much for doing this experiment with ChatGPT with me and with DigFin VOX.
My pleasure. Okay, stay in touch.